The American food supply is more fragile right now than at any point in modern history, and the window to secure your own household reserves is closing faster than most people realize. We are staring down a convergence of supply chain failures, relentless food inflation, and systemic economic decay that has already stripped store shelves bare once. And the data suggests the next wave will be far worse. What you are about to see is not a list of casual grocery suggestions. This is a survival inventory built from the hardest data on shelf stability, nutritional density, and long-term storage viability. Because the food you buy today may very well need to sustain you through conditions that look nothing like the comfortable routines of the past. The collapse has already begun, and those who wait until the panic sets in will find themselves standing in empty aisles with nothing but regret. We have watched the cost of basic nutrition climb at a pace that has outpaced wage growth for years. And the pressure is no longer a temporary spike. It is a structural breakdown. When transportation networks seize up, when processing plants shutter, and when the dollar's purchasing power continues to erode, the grocery store as you know it becomes a liability. The solution is not complicated, but it is urgent. You need a reserve of foods that will not betray you. Foods that can sit on a shelf for years, or even decades without spoiling, without losing their nutritional value, and without requiring a single kilowatt of electricity to keep them safe. The list we have compiled is drawn from the most conservative estimates available, and we have deliberately excluded anything with a shelf life measured in months. We are talking about foods that outlast recessions, outlast supply shocks, and in some cases, outlast entire civilizations. But before we move on, we kindly ask you to support our work with a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming lists. Without further ado, here are 15 must-have foods to stockpile now that never expire. Number 1, white rice. This is the absolute foundation of any serious long-term food reserve, and the reason comes down to simple chemistry. Brown rice contains the bran layer, and that bran layer is loaded with oils that eventually go rancid, which is why brown rice has a shelf life measured in months, typically 3 to 6 before the taste and texture begin to degrade. White rice has had that oily bran layer completely removed, and that single processing step transforms it into a food that, when stored properly, can remain perfectly edible for up to 30 years. 30 years, think about what that means. A 50-pound bag of white rice, sealed inside a food-grade bucket with oxygen absorbers, will still be there. Still be cookable, still be nutritionally viable 3 decades from now. That is not an exaggeration. That is the consensus among food storage researchers who have tested grains sealed in mylar and kept in cool, dark conditions. We are not telling you to eat nothing but rice. We are telling you that when every other carbohydrate source has failed, when the bread is gone and the pasta is gone, and the frozen meals are a distant memory, white rice will still be there. And on a pure cost per calorie basis, nothing else comes close. A single bag purchased today, at today's prices, locks in thousands upon thousands of calories that will not inflate away. You are not buying food. You are buying a hedge against the collapse of your own purchasing power. Number 2, honey. There is no other food on this list that carries the same almost mythical longevity. And for once, the mythology is backed by hard evidence. Archaeologists have pulled sealed jars of honey from Egyptian tombs that are thousands of years old. And the honey inside was still perfectly edible. 3,000 years, and it had not spoiled. The reason is that honey is naturally hostile to microbial life. Its moisture content is extraordinarily low, its acidity is high, and it contains natural enzymes that actively inhibit bacterial growth. In a properly sealed jar, honey does not expire. It may crystallize over time, turning thick and grainy, but that is not spoilage. That is simply the natural sugars reorganizing themselves. And a warm water bath will return it to its liquid state without damaging a single property of the food. From a survival standpoint, honey is more than a sweetener. It is a dense source of quick energy. It has been used for centuries as a topical treatment for wounds, and it can make otherwise unpalatable foods tolerable when morale is low. We are not suggesting that morale will not be low. We are suggesting that you will want every tool available to keep your household functional. And a jar of honey that never goes bad is one of the simplest tools you can secure right now. Number 3, salt. This is so basic that most people overlook it entirely, and that is a catastrophic mistake. Salt does not spoil, it cannot spoil. It is a mineral, not an organic product. And as long as you keep it dry and protected from contamination, its shelf life is literally indefinite. The salt you buy today will be chemically identical to the salt you use 20 years from now, or 50 years from now. But the reason salt belongs in every long-term stockpile is not just because it makes food taste better. It is because salt is the original food preservation technology. Before refrigeration, before canning, before freeze-drying, there was salt. It preserves meat, preserves fish, preserves vegetables, all through the simple mechanism of osmosis, drawing moisture out of microbial cells until they cannot survive. If the power grid fails, if refrigeration becomes a luxury, salt becomes one of the most valuable commodities you own. And here is a detail that matters. When you are buying salt for bulk storage, you want plain non-iodized salt. The iodine additives in standard table salt can break down over extended periods, and while that does not make the salt unsafe, it does mean the iodine content will degrade. For pure longevity and preservation use, the plain product is the superior choice. Number 4, sugar. Like salt, plain white sugar has an indefinite shelf life, provided you keep it dry and protected from moisture and pests. Sugar does not support microbial growth because its osmotic pressure is simply too high for bacteria to survive. A sealed container of white sugar, stored in a cool, dry place, will be just as usable in 20 or 30 years as it is today. Now, we understand that sugar is not exactly a health food, and we are not suggesting you build your entire reserve around it. But consider the role sugar plays in a crisis. It is pure, dense caloric energy. It makes bitter or bland foods palatable. It is essential for certain preservation methods, including jams and jellies. And it is a morale booster, something that cannot be dismissed when you are dealing with the psychological strain of prolonged economic hardship. There is a reason that sugar has been rationed in wartime economies throughout history. It is a strategic commodity, and the fact that it never expires makes it one of the easiest and cheapest long-term investments you can make today. Number 5, powdered milk. This is a category where the differences between products are enormous, and you need to know exactly what you are buying. Non-fat dry milk, when stored correctly in a sealed container away from moisture and heat, can remain nutritionally viable for 20 years or longer. 20 years, that is not a typo. The key is that the fat has been removed, because it is the milk fat that eventually goes rancid and ruins the product. Whole milk powder has a much shorter shelf life, typically measured in months or a couple of years at best. But the non-fat version, the kind sold specifically for long-term storage, is a different animal entirely. The optimal taste and nutritional profile is generally considered to be within the first 2 to 10 years. But properly sealed product has been tested and found viable at the 20-year mark and beyond. From a survival perspective, powdered milk provides protein, calcium, and a familiar taste that can anchor a household's diet when fresh dairy is simply not available. It can be used in cooking, in baking, or simply reconstituted and drunk. And when you consider that fresh milk is one of the first things to disappear from shelves during any supply disruption, the value of a 20-year dairy reserve becomes obvious. Number 6, vinegar. White vinegar specifically is another product that essentially does not expire. Its acetic acid content creates an environment where spoilage organisms cannot survive. And as long as the bottle remains sealed, that protection is permanent. But vinegar's role in a long-term stockpile goes far beyond cooking. It is a cleaning agent, a disinfectant, a deodorizer, and a food preservative all in one. You can use it to pickle vegetables, extending their shelf life dramatically without any refrigeration. You can use it to clean surfaces when commercial cleaning products are unavailable. You can use it in a dozen different household applications that have nothing to do with food. This versatility, combined with its effectively infinite shelf life, makes vinegar one of the most underrated items in any serious reserve. And because it is still relatively inexpensive, at least for now, there is no excuse not to have a substantial supply already in place. Number 7. Dried beans and lentils. This is another category where the longevity numbers are almost hard to believe. Lentils, when kept dry and stored in airtight containers, can remain nutritionally viable for up to 30 years. 30 years of protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrates, sitting quietly on your shelf, waiting to be needed. The key is moisture control. As long as the beans or lentils remain dry, they remain stable. But the moment moisture gets in, the clock starts ticking and spoilage becomes a real risk. That is why proper storage is non-negotiable. Mylar bags, food-grade buckets, oxygen absorbers, all of it matters. But when you get the storage right, you are locking in one of the most nutritionally complete food sources available, at a cost that is still remarkably low. And unlike rice, which is primarily a carbohydrate source, beans and lentils bring significant protein to the table. In a scenario where meat is unavailable or unaffordable, that protein becomes critical. Number 8. Canned meats. This is where the distinction between high-acid and low-acid canned goods becomes absolutely essential. Low-acid canned goods, which include canned meat, poultry, stews, and soups, have a shelf life of 2 to 5 years according to standard guidance. But that guidance is conservative, and in practice, properly stored canned meats have been found to remain safe and nutritionally viable for 5 to 10 years. Sometimes longer, depending on the specific product and storage conditions. The can itself is the preservation system. The food inside has been heat-treated to destroy microorganisms, and the sterile, airtight container prevents any new contamination from entering. As long as the can remains intact, no bulging, no rust, no deep dents, the contents are protected. Canned meat is not the most glamorous food on this list, but it is one of the most practical. It requires no water to prepare, no cooking fuel, no refrigeration. You open the can and you eat. In a genuine emergency, that simplicity has value that cannot be overstated. Number 9. Freeze-dried foods. This is the gold standard of long-term food storage, and the numbers reflect it. Unopened freeze-dried foods, stored in cool, dark conditions, can last 25 to 30 years. That is a generation. That is longer than most people stay in a single home. The freeze-drying process removes virtually all moisture from the food, and without moisture, microbial growth is impossible. The result is a product that retains its nutritional value, its taste, and its texture for decades. Freeze-dried fruits, freeze-dried vegetables, freeze-dried meats, and complete freeze-dried meals are all available. And the technology has advanced to the point where the quality is genuinely impressive. The catch is the cost. Freeze-dried foods are significantly more expensive than their canned or dried counterparts, and that upfront investment can be a barrier. But when you calculate the cost per year of shelf life, the value proposition changes. You are buying food that will still be good when your children or your grandchildren need it. And once opened, using oxygen absorbers and airtight containers can extend the freshness of the remaining product even further. Number 10. Instant coffee. This is not a luxury, this is a strategic asset. Freeze-dried, vacuum-sealed instant coffee can remain viable for 20 years or more without losing its potency, which means you can lock in your caffeine supply for 2 decades at today's prices. Caffeine is a dependency for a huge portion of the American population, and the withdrawal symptoms from sudden caffeine deprivation are real and debilitating. Headaches, fatigue, irritability, inability to focus, all of it hits within days of going cold turkey. In a crisis, that is not a condition you want to be dealing with. Instant coffee solves the problem with a product that requires no special equipment, no brewing, no filters, just hot water. And the fact that it can sit on a shelf for 20 years without degrading makes it one of the most practical items on this entire list. If coffee prices continue their upward trajectory, and there is no indication they will stop, the coffee you buy today will also be a financial asset, worth far more than you paid for it. Number 11. Hardtack. This is the oldest item on this list, and it is here because its track record is literally centuries long. Hardtack is a simple mixture of flour, water, and sometimes salt, baked until every trace of moisture has been removed. The result is a dense, rock-hard biscuit that is essentially inert. There are documented examples of hardtack from the 1860s, from the American Civil War, that have been found and are still technically edible. 160 years, and the stuff still has not spoiled. That is not a theoretical shelf life. That is a demonstrated historical fact. Hardtack is not a pleasant food. It is designed to be soaked in liquid before eating, and even then, it is about as appealing as it sounds. But when you're talking about foods that never expire, hardtack is in a category of its own. It is cheap, it is simple to make at home if you choose, and it will outlast every other item in your reserve. It is the ultimate insurance policy against the collapse of the food supply. Number 12, wheat berries. This is the form of wheat that most people never think about, and it is a mistake that costs them decades of shelf life. Ground flour, the kind you buy in bags at the grocery store, has a shelf life measured in months. The oils in the wheat germ begin to oxidize the moment the grain is milled, and rancidity follows quickly. But the whole wheat berry, the intact kernel before it is ever ground, is a different product entirely. Sealed in airtight containers and kept in a cool environment, wheat berries remain viable for 30 years or longer. 30 years? And when you need flour, you grind the berries yourself, producing fresh flour that is nutritionally superior to anything you can buy off a shelf. This requires a grain mill, which is an additional investment. But it is a one-time purchase that unlocks a 30-year supply of the most fundamental food staple in the Western diet. When you understand that the flour on store shelves is already dying the moment you buy it, the case for wheat berries becomes undeniable. Number 13, ramen noodles. This is a controversial inclusion because ramen is not exactly a health food, and we are not going to pretend otherwise. But the shelf life numbers are real. Flat brick-style ramen packets stored in a cool, dry place and transferred into airtight containers can remain good for up to 10 years. 10 years for a food that costs pennies per serving. The reason is the way the noodles are processed. They are flash-fried, removing virtually all moisture, and the result is a product that is extraordinarily stable. The seasoning packets, which are primarily salt and flavorings, are similarly long-lived. From a pure survival standpoint, ramen provides calories, carbohydrates, and sodium, all of which are essential in a crisis. It is not the foundation of a long-term reserve, but as a supplement. As a morale food, as a cheap source of calories that will not spoil for a decade. It has a legitimate place. And at current prices, there is simply no reason not to have a substantial supply already stored away. Number 14, ghee. This is the clarified butter that most Americans have never used. And it is here because it solves a problem that plagues every other fat-based food. Regular butter spoils quickly. Most cooking oils go rancid within 2 to 3 years, even when stored in cool, dark conditions. But ghee is different. The clarification process removes the milk solids and water from the butter, leaving behind pure butterfat that is dramatically more stable. Properly prepared ghee can last significantly longer than regular butter or most cooking oils, without refrigeration and without the rancidity that ruins other fats. This matters because fats are essential to human health, and they are the hardest category of food to store long-term. Ghee is the exception. It provides the caloric density and cooking utility of a fat, with a shelf life that rivals the best items on this list. It is not cheap, but it is a strategic investment in a category where options are limited. Number 15, peanut butter. This is the final item, and it is here because it combines shelf stability with zero preparation requirements. Peanut butter can be stored on a shelf in its original container, no refrigeration. No special packaging, no oxygen absorbers. It is ready to eat the moment you open it, and it provides protein, fat, and calories in a form that requires no cooking, no water, and no preparation of any kind. The shelf life is not as extreme as some of the other items on this list, but a properly sealed jar of commercial peanut butter will remain good for a very long time, and its convenience factor is unmatched. In a crisis, when you are exhausted, when cooking is not an option, when you need calories fast, peanut butter is the answer. It is the food you will reach for when everything else feels like too much effort. And that convenience, that instant availability, has a value that goes beyond simple nutrition. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The 15 foods we have listed here represent the foundation of a serious long-term reserve. But they are only the beginning. The broader economic picture is deteriorating faster than most people understand. And the food supply chain is more vulnerable than it has been in generations. Every one of these foods represents a hedge against a future that is looking increasingly unstable. The prices you pay today will not be available forever. The availability itself will not be guaranteed forever. And the window to act, to build your reserve before the next wave of disruptions hits, is closing. The collapse has already begun, and those who prepare now will be the ones who weather the storm. Those who wait will find themselves at the mercy of empty shelves and soaring prices, and by then, it will be too late. Thank you for watching.